It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher.
My personality is I want to win badly. I want to win more Lombardis for Philadelphia and our fans. We got the greatest fans around, and I will do everything possible.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Time for Football at 4 as the new league year opens. Right now, it is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, which drops with a new edition tomorrow at 6 a.m. And it is brought to you locally by Dr. Lyle M. Back for everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery. Go to iloveLyleBack.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is here as the new league year is here. Geoff Mosher, the Eagles breezed under the salary cap, and they did it in a very peculiar way last night. Can you explain some of the things that happened to get them under the salary cap before today's 4 p.m. deadline?
I would say, Mike, they restructured anybody and everybody that they could possibly restructure. Kicker. I saw someone joke on the on Twitter. Janitor. Maybe a few front office guys lost their jobs. I don't know, but obviously they did all the maneuvering, and then of course the strange reverting of the Marquise Goodwin trade back to San Francisco. So they don't have to be on the hook for they saved a couple of million with that one as well. And so, yes.
They saved like $4 million with that deal there.
Yeah. So, and look, I mean, as we've talked about for probably the week or two leading up, he was a candidate to, if he was going to be on the team, it was going to be under a completely new deal, a restructured deal, which would involve a pay cut. So I don't know what happened there or why that reverts. Maybe the deal was contingent in the first place on a restructure, and since he didn't agree to a restructure, the deal then is negated. So perhaps Marquise feels because this isn't a great wide receiver market that he can get more than what his base salary was going to be if he gets cut. I have no idea. We'll have to see. It's interesting. There's always surprises in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, so what was this? The fact that he didn't play, the Eagles essentially wiped out the deal?
Well, anybody who did not play, anybody who opted out last year, part of the agreement in the CBA was that you come back this year under last year's contract. You got a certain stipend, but then when you came back for this year, you were operating under last year's contract. So his contract technically was rights of the Eagles because they traded a 7th-round pick for it. But there's something that happened here which has negated the trade that made it revert. So technically his rights now go back to San Francisco, who owned the contract, and they're, I'm sure, going to move on and cut him. And what I'm guessing, if he has a good agent or if this is a smart move by Marquise, he's going to wind up getting more money there from somebody else than he felt he was going to get under the deal that he was currently on.
So the Eagles end up getting a 7th-round pick, reverting. They traded 6, but I guess for whatever reason, the 7th is coming back to them. Is that how you're understanding it?
I thought they had traded a 7. Maybe they did.
The original trade, they swapped 6th-round picks. But
they swapped, right.
Yeah. They swapped 6th-round picks and got Goodwin. Now they're getting a 7th round in return. That's what made it, to me, a little wonky. But I think it saved them $4.2 million, which got them under the cap. So now they're under the cap, Geoff. The new year has started. Free agents should be flying in. Now what?
Well, now what? Now we see. I can't wait. What is it, 4 o'clock right now? Happy New Year, Mike. And so, man, I'm really excited to see what happens in free agency. I mean, there's some really awesome names out there. Bud Dupree, Corey Linsley. I just really wonder what's going to happen to these guys. That's a joke. We already know that they've already signed and agreed. But the Eagles, I think, are the only team that has not been reportedly signing or agreeing to terms with anyone, and that really shouldn't surprise us. I mean, we know what their cap situation is. It's a little bit surprising that the backup quarterback market, went as it did yesterday, and the Eagles didn't get involved there because, as I can tell you, Mike, they're not going into 2021 with no quarterbacks or with one quarterback under contract. That's just not happening.
Yeah, I know there's the Brissett, he ended up going, Tyrod Taylor, he ends up going, Fitzpatrick, he's off the board. So a lot of these like middle of the road backups that you thought maybe were in play, they're all off the board. which leads us to the potential of maybe a big fish. So would the Eagles be interested in making a call to the Houston Texans and getting involved for, say, Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, I mean, look, we know how aggressive the Eagles are, and they obviously, on one hand, they're talking about Jalen Hurts, and I'm sure that that's probably their most likely plan to go forward. But I don't think that's going to preclude them from being aggressive as situation presents itself, and they always are, whether it's a quarterback, big-time wide receiver, or pass rusher. So I imagine a lot of teams have called the Houston Texans about Deshaun Watson. And as we get closer to the date, and as it becomes more clear, and by the date, I mean the draft, and as it becomes more clear that Deshaun Watson's stance hasn't changed, I think the conversation coming out of Houston is going to start to be different.
Yeah.
And so Adam and I have been looking into this all day. We'll probably have more on the podcast tomorrow, but I think it's fair and based on what we sense to expect that the Eagles we'll make these phone calls and have discussions.
Yeah, I want to, real quick, this is from Jason La Canfora today in his NFL Insider Notes. Quote, I hear that it's very much at the ownership level, as one league source put it. No action for the Eagles. It has to be killing them. Another GM said, quote, would Howie trading for Watson surprise me? No, now that you mention it. He goes on to say that this is essentially that the ownership level. Again, we're hearing more about Jeff Lurie, but essentially here's the article starts out by saying there's just too many whispers from the ownership level that the Eagles want to be in on this. So now that we're hearing all this stuff about Lurie, this article kind of insinuates that Jeff Lurie wants to get involved, which would totally be interestingly against what Mortensen reported that, hey, they want to build around Hurts and don't, bring in a guy to compete with them.
Well, not necessarily, and that's the beauty of reports like that. Of course, if you bring in Deshaun Watson, there's probably a good chance that you would have to deal Jalen Hurts to get Deshaun Watson. I mean, Houston needs a quarterback if they're going to deal Watson, and therefore you can't build around a player that you don't have. So you can certainly see Jeffrey Lurie having option A or option B. Option A being, look, we're not going to draft really at number 6 a quarterback and try to move up to get somebody and give up capital. We're gonna build around Jalen Hurts, a guy we picked in the second round last year. Or option B is we're going to be able to get one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and Jalen may have to be included in that trade, but we just got one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and now we've got we can go forward from there.
Yeah, now that's another thing. What would they have to give up? We would imagine it's a ton. Jalen Hurts would probably have to be involved. That number 6 overall pick, you would probably have to start there, and then multiple other picks, including, one next year, maybe the year after. Do you think the Eagles, number one, have the ammunition, and number two, would be willing to part with it, knowing that they have so many holes to fill?
Well, I mean, I think any team has the ammunition as long as you're willing to give up a lot of first-round picks, right? I don't know that they have maybe more attractive ammunition compared to a team like the Jets. If the Jets wanted to get in, I think the Jets have multiple first-round picks this year and next year, if I'm not mistaken. Plus, their picks are even higher than the Eagles are. So this puts Houston kind of in the driver's seat as far as how badly do you want this guy and how willing are you to outbid the next team. And so that's where the Eagles kind of have to figure out what is their point of return. In other words, what are they willing to give up and what are they willing to just walk away from because that's just too much. I think the Jets face this as well. Any team that trades multiple picks, first-round picks, future picks, draft capital, players, whatever, to get Deshaun Watson does not want to be in a position where all they've got is Deshaun Watson and no ability to build around him.
Yeah, so the NFL league year is underway, which means the Carson Wentz trade is now official. What also is official is Derek Barnett's fifth-year option valued over $10. That is officially guaranteed. So do we think that – because I think a lot of the conversation we've had this offseason is we would be surprised if he plays at that number. Does it look like Derek Barnett will be back playing at that number?
It does appear that way for now. It certainly does seem like that, unless he's used also in trade conversations or anything like that. But, I mean, you look at the Eagles, and at defensive end, they just don't have a lot of youth. I mean, they don't have a lot of bodies, to be honest with you. They've got Brandon Graham. They've got Derek Barnett, and they've got Josh Sweat. And Josh Sweat has been situational for reasons, relating to his knees and his past knee injuries. And Derek Barnett has been off injured. So if you were to get rid of one of those guys, if you were to get rid of Derek Barnett, I mean, I don't know who you would wind up playing a lot of those snaps opposite Brandon Graham, who himself is now north of 33 and a little bit older, very rarely injured, but it could happen at any time. I mean, This is a position that they've got to replenish.
Yeah, and Graham, it's funny because, he's played all 16 games, I think 3 or 4 seasons in a row. You wonder, he's been one of the few guys who hasn't gotten hurt over this run of years of injuries. By the way, Rodney McLeod also got restructured. Do you anticipate Rodney being ready for the start of the year?
Probably the ACL has been an injury that seems to trend toward 6 months now, 6 to 8 instead of the old year that it used to be like 10, 12 years ago. So I forget exactly what month he injured it in, but as long as he's been getting the right training, which I imagine he has, and rehab and has access to everything, I don't think it's a stretch to say he'd be ready by late August or, September.
All right. I want to get your take on this, too, by the way. This is a Les Bowen tweet that just recently came out on the Carson Wentz trade, that Carson Wentz will meet with the media on Thursday, but will not take questions from the Philly media.
Wow. That's – man, there have been a lot of things, Mike, that you and I have talked about on this show, and then Adam and I have talked about on our podcast that have really come to surprise us over the past year and a half about Carson. I mean, we've always known about the kind of the hard-headedness from a coaching standpoint, but some of this, whether you want to call it vindictiveness or petty, I don't know what word to describe it, but that to limit the type of questions you're being asked in a press conference goes to show the issue that he has of being challenged both by coaches, by media now. I mean, I'm just speculating based on what you're telling me. I don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard that kind of a demand ever. And if I were the Colts, I would accept that. I would say, listen, we can't, there's a thing called freedom of the press here. And while we're a private institution and we don't have to allow it, we're not going to all of a sudden, give into that kind of a demand. This is a press conference, an open press conference, and people should be allowed to ask these questions. And certainly the Colts reporters are probably going to want to ask what happened in Philadelphia as well.
Yeah, the tweet from Les Bowen 4 minutes ago. So the Carson Wentz trade is official. I'm told the Colts are doing a Zoom news conference with Wentz on Thursday, but they won't be taking questions from the Philly media. So unless Les, who has an interesting sense of humor, is being funny there, it sounds as if he's saying they are doing a conference, but they will not allow people like yourself and others from the Philly media in there. And this comes off the heels of, Peterson doing that podcast with John Clark the other day and essentially suggesting that a lot of this was all blown out of proportion. Carson has his chance to just squash all of this, and he's not taking it. That's a little surprising, I guess. I mean, you figure it's been so long. He's in a new place. Just get it out of the way.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's, if I were the PR director there, I would say, Carson, look, let him ask the question. You can give a vague answer. You mastered that in your 4 years in Philadelphia. You know what's coming, so you can already kind of rehearse what you're going to say. But it's a really bad look for you, for us, and for everyone involved if we just say no Philly media. And that, if I were the PR guy, that's what I would do. And if Carson didn't agree to it, man. You got problems there. That's really rough. Now, you remember the Washington press conference all the way back when McNabb got traded, and a lot of Philly media went down there and asked some tough questions, and it was almost like I remember that like we got a bad rap. A lot of Eagles reporters were getting slammed for going down there and asking some difficult questions on Donovan, but the questions have to be asked, and so this is the job. I'm very surprised by this.
Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. It drops tomorrow at 6. So let me ask you, now they're cap compliant. The new year is here. I would imagine it's, you're going to keep an eye on these like veteran players who are going to be released. Yesterday, John Clayton was on and said, he counted, I think it was, I forget the exact number of how many guys have been released that are strictly just cap casualties, guys that would not have been released had the cap not been lowered by so much. That has put an influx of new talent on the street here. So the Eagles, what kind of guys should we be anticipating that they have their eyes on who are being released? That could be good options maybe on like a 1-year deal.
Yeah, first of all, I respect the heck out of John Clayton, but I'm not 100% sure that some of these releases that you've seen of veterans are cap casualties, or if the cap was bigger, they'd be kept. It's not like there are some real Pro Bowl players getting axed right here. I mean, you're talking about guys like Adoree Jackson or the cornerback. Seen a couple of linebackers make it onto the waiver wire, some offensive linemen. One of them asked for his release, the one from the center from Oakland. So
he got traded, by the way. He just got traded.
Yeah, right. That's right.
A.J. Green, by the way, signed with Arizona. That just happened.
Yeah, so maybe Janoris Jenkins, who the Saints let go, but then they went and signed Richard Sherman. So, I mean, I'm not even sure that was cap-related or a better fit from a guy that they were targeting there. So who would the Eagles target? You know, a linebacker, a safety, a cornerback, I think would be smart for them. I don't know if it's somebody that just recently got released or somebody. Here's what I think the Eagles are doing, Mike.
Because you're looking at guys who are bargain, probably who had some sort of name and need to restore their value.
Yes, I mean, you're really, for the Eagles, like you're looking for guys who can come in and hold a position down while you draft guys, and if the guy you draft is better, then you get to play him instead. You know, the 1-year veteran deals. A guy like Xavier Rhodes or Malik. See, Malik Hooker's a little different. Malik Hooker's a safety. He's only played in the league 4 or 5 years, right? 4 years. He's a good player when healthy, but he's had health issues. So that's the kind of guy that you kind of hope the market, he goes 1, 2, 3 more days, he still doesn't have a deal. Kind of like how the Eagles got Alshon Jeffrey, to be honest with you. The market just wasn't there for a pretty good player who had success because of an injury history, and Alshon, of course, had the PED thing. So the Eagles were able to scoop him up on a 1-year deal. He played well, and then you gave him an extension. You can do that with Malik Hooker. A guy like Xavier Rhodes, a little bit different. He's 30 years old, has made 3 Pro Bowls, but his best days are probably behind him. But he can certainly hold down that spot opposite Slay while you're grooming a Patrick Surtain or somebody else that maybe you get in the draft and you're trying to eventually make that replacement. So I think the Eagles will look for the bargains here on 1-year deals, whether it's a young guy who's been hurt or a veteran who's just still trying to give you something like Patrick Robinson was in 2016.
That's exactly the name that I was thinking of. Geoff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast. It drops tomorrow. What are some of the hot topics that at 6 o'clock tomorrow you guys will be discussing?
Well, we're certainly going to talk a little bit more about Deshaun Watson. Eagles offensive line. I believe there are some developments there that we'll be speaking about. And, of course, we'll start to get into the backup quarterback picture because now that those two, the Tyrod Taylors and the Brissetts are off the board, we got to figure out what their move's going to be made there. So, I mean, just those 3 issues alone will probably take up a good amount of time.
And the new Q&A show, anything that you want to kind of tease our listeners with for them? That was a very good episode this week.
Thank you. If you really like stories behind the scenes of what happens, we know that Jason Avant and Quentin Michael had, were eventually not Eagles, but it's how they became ex-Eagles, right? Were great stories, specifically with Avant and his dealings with Chip Kelly, where he was very open about. So everybody's got to hear that. And Quentin Michael and his dealings with Andy Reid on a way different level were very candid. And then those guys went and broke down the defensive back situation that the Eagles have now.
Yeah.
And then some of the free agents. Both of those guys were really up on the free agent landscape. I thought they had some interesting comments about guys like Kenny Galladay, who's out there, and then of course Rhodes and Hooker, who we just spoke about.
All right, check that out. Inside the Birds podcast tomorrow, dropped at 6. Q&A with Avant and Quentin Michael. Very good stuff, behind the scenes, inside stuff there. It's funny. I was doing some analytical look at my video stream here, and it says the people who watch my show, the show they watch the most is Inside the Birds. That's the show that people who watch my show, the next show they watch the most is yours. So you're doing a good job.
Thank you. It reminds me of Ghostbusters when Bill Murray walks in and the guy says, "Hey, I watch your show. It's my second favorite show." And he goes, "Oh, thanks." And he stops and goes, "Wait, what's your first favorite show?" And the old guy goes, "Bassmasters." And the look on Bill Murray, on Venkman's face, like, "Oh, great, thanks."
Well, it could be worse,
No, I'm kidding. It's great. I love being a partner with you, man.
All right. Check that out tomorrow. And, of course, tomorrow, Adam Kaplan is in since we are off on Friday. Adam is going to jump in tomorrow because he wants to discuss all this offseason stuff as well. So you'll have a fresh Inside the Birds tomorrow and Adam for Football at 4. We are live tomorrow at the FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Atlantic City. So come out and see us. Geoff, I will talk to you, I guess, on Monday.
Look forward to it. Have a great one.
All right, Geoff Mosher, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds broadcast and brought to you by Dr. Lyle M. Back. From skincare to cosmetic surgery, go to iloveLyleBack.com or call 856-MAKEOVER for Dr. Lyle M. Back, proud sponsor of Football at 4.